When it comes to Magic the Gathering, I must admit I'm a complete noob and I don't know much about the game, but I'm still willing to go through a magical culinary adventure with y'all, where I'll be fishing for flavorful recipes, poutine in some work in the kitchen that will hopefully all turn out pretty good. Let's get rolling cause I'm getting kinda hungry. Here's Magic the Gathering, Cuisines of the Multiverse. Magic the Gathering, Cuisines of the Multiverse, the official cookbook with recipes by Victoria Rosenthal and text by Jenna Helen, takes us through the expansive multiverse inspired by the worlds of Magic the Gathering. Now growing up, I played Pokemon, Digimon, and even dabbled in a bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! But for some reason, none of the kids I grew up with ever played Magic. So a lot of these references are going to be very unfamiliar to me. I've always wanted to get into it though, so maybe this cookbook is going to light the spark. The cookbook is told from the perspective of Teferi, who is a planeswalker traveling through different multiverses, learning and documenting the many different food he's come across to maybe one day write a book called Cuisines of the Multiverse, which happens to be the very name of this cookbook. The intro text, chapter transitions, as well as all of the recipe flavor text contains many references to the lore of Magic the Gathering. Admittedly, I didn't really get much out of it because there were so many names of characters and places that just went way over my head, but if you're knee-deep into Magic lore, then a lot of these references might be nostalgic for you. The recipes are categorized into different chapters based on the different planes that exist in the Magic universe. Each chapter starts off with a piece of lore that expands on that plane's culture and character with full spread art that reflects the classic high fantasy art style of the card game. Lots of really amazing artwork scattered throughout the cookbook. The food photos themselves are bright and inviting, with many of them having that medieval style backgrounds, then plating to tie to the theme. In terms of how the recipes tie thematically to the world of Magic the Gathering, for me, it's kind of hard to say. I googled some of these recipes and the only direct recreation of card that I saw was Ginger Brute. The rest of the recipes, I get a sense, are loosely inspired by the cards and characters in MTG, but a lot of them feel pretty tacked on and it kind of feels like they're really reaching for a connection. But then again, I don't know anything about Magic, so maybe I'm just completely wrong. If you're deep into Magic lore, I'm curious to know if any of these recipes you're seeing here resonates with you. Let us know in the comments. Although I'm not familiar with Magic, I am very familiar with tasty food, so I'm gonna go ahead to the kitchen and gather 3 of these recipes to see if there's magic in these meals. As we planeswalk through the multiverse, we start in the adventure world of Zendikar, where the boorish herder Bruce Tarl relaxes at the tavern surrounded by friends sharing tales of his culinary adventures while also enjoying a hearty serving of Adventurer's Poutine. This recipe was the one that got the most votes in my Patreon poll. If you want to be able to vote for the cookbooks and recipes that I'm going to do next and help the channel out, then I invite you to check out the Patreon. Thanks for your support. This poutine is going to be topped with short ribs, so in a large zip-top bag, combine a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of kosher salt, and a teaspoon of ground black pepper. Mix that all up, then add 3 pounds of beef short ribs, seal and shake until the meat is well coated. Now we're going to cook this meat up by heating up a tablespoon of canola oil in a Dutch oven over medium-high heat. Brown the floured short ribs on all sides, about 3 to 5 minutes per side. You might need to work in batches and add more oil if necessary. Once browned, remove the ribs and set them aside. Add another tablespoon of canola oil to the pot, then add 1 roughly chopped up carrot, a chopped up celery stalk, 1 roughly chopped onion, 6 chopped garlic cloves, and cook these all up for about 8 minutes, stirring occasionally until the vegetables soften. Add in 4 cups of beef broth, 1 cup of water, 4 thyme sprigs, 1 rosemary sprig, 2 bay leaves, 3 dried shiitake mushrooms, and a tablespoon of whole black peppercorns. Return the short ribs to the pot, cover, and transfer the pot to the oven and cook low and slow at 250 degrees Fahrenheit for 5 to 6 hours until the beef is tender and easily falls apart. Once cooked, I'm going to go ahead and shred the beef, and we're going to set aside the remaining broth for the gravy, which we'll be making in a bit. Now we're going to jump on the potato wedges. In a large bowl, mix together a 1/4 cup of olive oil, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of oregano, half a teaspoon of sage, a pinch of cayenne pepper, a half teaspoon of ground black pepper, and a teaspoon of kosher salt. Mix that all up. Now, as for the potatoes, we'll cut up 3 brown potatoes into thick wedges or fries. I'm gonna go with wedges like how the cookbook has it. Toss them in the seasoning mixture until fully coated. Then arrange the seasoned wedges on a foil-lined baking sheet that's been sprayed with non-stick spray. Bake this at 450 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes, then flip the wedges and bake for another 15 minutes before turning on the broiler and cooking for another 4 to 5 minutes until crispy and golden. Okay, let's move on to that gravy. In a pot over medium-high heat, melt 3 tablespoons of unsalted butter. Once melted, whisk in a 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. Then slowly pour in a cup of that leftover beef broth with all of the short rib juices in it and whisk constantly until the gravy thickens. Season with kosher salt and black pepper to taste. Now let's put it all together. Place a generous portion of the potato wedges in a bowl, top with a 1/3 cup of cheese curds and some shredded short ribs. Pour some of that warm gravy on top to kind of warm and slightly melt the cheese, and top with some diced scallions. I'm a big fan of poutine, and this to me looks like a mountain of deliciousness. From the lands of Zendikar to the untamed jungles of Ixalan, we see the mind mage Jace fighting to survive the land's dangerous beasts and magnificent ruins. He got through those first lonely days thanks to quick thinking and this improvised island recipe, the Deserted Isle Wrap. In a small bowl, mix together 2 teaspoons of chili powder, a teaspoon of turmeric, 1 teaspoon of coriander, half a teaspoon of cumin, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, half a teaspoon of kosher salt, half a teaspoon of ground black pepper, 2 tablespoons of lime juice, and a 1/4 cup of olive oil. Stir until fully combined. So for the fish, the recipe calls for 4 fillets, ½ pounds each, of Chilean sea bass, but here's the deal. 2 pounds of Chilean sea bass is very expensive. This is bougie fish, y'all. But then I also read that black cod is a good substitute in terms of taste and texture. So since I can't stomach paying around 70 USD for fish, and because I'm really curious, I'm gonna be doing 2 fillets of Chilean sea bass and 3 black cod fillets just to see if I can taste the difference. Rub the spice mixture evenly over the fish, then place each piece of fish on a 12-inch square of banana leaf. Wrap the fish securely in the banana leaf and make sure it's completely sealed, and repeat this process with the remaining fillets. Arrange the wrapped fillets on a baking sheet and refrigerate for 1 hour, and in the meantime, let's make some chimichurri. This is pretty simple. In a food processor, mix together 5 garlic cloves, a bunch of parsley, 1 bunch of cilantro, 2 tablespoons of fresh oregano, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, and a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper, a pinch of sugar, and a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Pulse until finely chopped, then transfer to an airtight container and add in the juice and zest of 1 lime, a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, gonna transfer to another container because I'm running out of space here, and a ½ cup of olive oil. Stir until well combined, and if you'd like, you can add some salt and pepper to your taste. We're gonna layer this over our fish later on. Okay, so now take the fish out of the refrigerator and let them sit at room temperature for about 15 minutes. Once ready, bake the wrapped fillets at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 to 18 minutes, or until the fish is cooked through and reaches an internal temperature of about 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Carefully unravel the banana leaves before serving, and for extra flavor, we're gonna serve it with some of that chimichurri sauce we just made. If I was stranded in a deserted island, a nice seafood meal like this will definitely soften the blow. Our last stop in our multiversal adventure is the enchanted land of Eldraine, where King Alginus Kenrith and Queen Linden host the realm's most spectacular activities. But make sure to follow the rules though, or the fairies might turn you into a pumpkin, kinda like these turn into a pumpkin rolls. Start by combining a tablespoon of active dry yeast with a 3/4 cup of warm milk that's been heated to about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and let that sit in room temperature for 5 minutes to bloom. In the bowl of a stand mixer fitted with a dough hook, combine 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of kosher salt, a teaspoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of ground ginger, a 1/4 teaspoon of ground allspice, a 1/8 teaspoon of ground clove, and a 1/4 cup of light brown sugar. Mix, 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 then add the bloomed yeast mixture along with a 3/4 cup of pumpkin puree, 1 whole egg, and 1 additional egg yolk. Mix everything together just until a shaggy dough forms. While the dough is kneading, gradually add 4 tablespoons of room temperature unsalted butter, 1 tablespoon at a time, kneading for 5 minutes. When the dough is smooth and elastic, transfer it to a greased bowl, cover it, and let it rise in a warm place for about an hour or until it's doubled in size. Once risen, punch the dough down and knead it for a little bit. Divide the dough into 8 equal portions. Shape each piece into a round ball. Now we're going to need 8 pieces of butcher twine about 2.5 feet long and sprayed with non-stick spray. We're going to tie the twine around the dough pretty tightly to create 8 equal segments that kind of forms this pumpkin shape. Make sure to tie the string securely at the bottom. Do this for all of the portions and lay them on a parchment paper lined baking sheet and let them rest for 30 minutes. While we wait on that, let's make an egg wash by whisking together 1 egg, a tablespoon of honey, and a tablespoon of milk. Once the dough has rested, remove the kitchen towel and brush the tops of the buns with the egg wash. All that's left to do is to pop these in the oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 16 to 19 minutes until golden brown and fully cooked. Let them cool for 20 minutes before gently removing the string. The string is wedged really deep in there, so you gotta be careful not to fully rip the buns. If you want to give each bun a pumpkin stem, press an almond into the center of each one. Last but not the least, to make a brown sugar dip, combine a half cup of room temperature unsalted butter with a 1/3 cup of dark brown sugar and a half a teaspoon of kosher salt. Mix until smooth and fluffy. Serve alongside the warm pumpkin rolls for a sweet and cozy treat. Now that we've gathered all the yummies, let's taste some magic. And this adventurous poutine is certainly magical. I love poutine and this one passes the test for sure. I typically don't like toppings on my poutine. I just like fries, gravy, and cheese curd. I like it pretty simple, but the braised beef in this one definitely hits the spot. Super tender and moist and pairs really well with the decadent gravy. It's like an umami explosion. The warm meat and gravy slightly melts the cheese curds just to give it a subtle creaminess, but still retains that squeaky chew. The wedges are also really tasty, guys. Good level of crisp and fluffiness, and the seasoning and spices on point. No deep frying, so it's surprisingly simple and easy to make. Definitely one of the best meals I've made on this channel. The bar is set high, but let's see if these deserted aisle wraps can clear it. Okay, I still like the poutine better, but this is pretty good too. The fish is well seasoned and cooked perfectly. I don't know if the banana leaves imparted any flavor, but I think it really helped keep in the moisture. The chimichurri is super strong, but in a good way. It's very tart and herby with a little spice and coats the fish really nicely. In terms of the flavor, I actually find that the Chilean sea bass and the black cod taste very similar, but the main difference to me is the texture. I find that the Chilean sea bass tastes a bit creamier and silkier, and you can feel the larger flakes in each bite. It also has pretty large bones, which is good because you can easily pick them out. But in terms of value, I don't think it's worth shelling out the extra cash. I'd rather just go with the black cod just to get the bang for my buck. Let's try out these pumpkins. Really satisfying to pull and pick these apart because of the shape. Trying just the bread first tastes just like regular bread, which is surprising because I was expecting to taste more of the spices and the pumpkin. The texture is perfect though, so I don't know if adding more pumpkin would have ruined that, but I definitely think I could have doubled the spices. Let's try it with the butter. Let me tell you, this puts the magic in Magic the Gathering. This butter dip is so simple. It's just butter, brown sugar, and salt, but it's the perfect ratio of each. Super creamy with the perfect amount of saltiness to complement the sweet. The pumpkin bread on its own is nothing special, but with this butter dip, out of this world. So is the Magic the Gathering Cookbook any good? Food-wise, I think this book knocks it out of the park. The recipes I made were all delish, and there are many more tasty looking dishes that I saw that I want to try. Theme-wise, I'm not convinced that there's a strong connection. Feels kind of tacked on, but I think you magic experts know better, so you let us know in the comments.